Welcome back to game 31 of the 365-day chess challenge. If this is your first time here, then make sure to smash up the likes and subscribe to the channel. If you're returning to the channel, to the games, then remember to hit the like button. It's another 10-minute rapid. Here we go. Belgian outsider 959. Just to make you aware of what's going on with this recording, this is the third time recording. When I first recorded, I completely forgot to turn on the mic, and so the second time I again forgot to turn on the mic. I thought I did, and I forgot, and I got so wrapped up in getting the game processed, this video processed, that I forgot. So, third time's the charm. I was explaining a little bit what I was doing. I watched a video by Magnuson just yesterday, I think, in which he mentioned that in order for your opponent to commit a blunder, you need to threaten them 10 times. He read that somewhere in a book. I have no idea if that's a real thing or not, but that's what he said. And so, you know, him being a world champion and all that stuff, I figure he read a lot of books on chess. So let's go with that assumption that if you do threaten your opponent 10 times, the opponent should commit a blunder. I wasn't counting my threats, but my opponent committed 2 blunders here, which helped me secure my win in this game. And so that's what we're looking for. So stick around to see how this game ends, now that I, provided you with a spoiler. So this move, the bishop went to b5, threatening my king. The best way to protect it is, rather than moving a pawn up on the c file, it's best to move your bishop, because you activate your bishop. And then if an exchange occurs, then it is an even exchange. It'll be a bishop for a bishop, a white bishop for a white bishop, obviously. And because this activates your bishop, and if I were to push my pawn up to c6, chances are that that pawn would be captured by the d6 or d5 pawn, rather, and that would not be, best, because the opponent would continue pushing that pawn onto the b file, threatening my rook or just coming way too close for comfort. So I went ahead and started eating up his pawns in the center, because I was trying to get rid of as many pawns in the center of his as possible, of the opponent's, which, in exchange kind of broke up my file of pawn defense. But at least if you look up at my opponent, his entire front row is pretty much shattered. Even, he's got a weak pawn there on the a file. He's got a pawn island in the middle, and one pawn island that's protecting his king. But basically his pieces are undeveloped, with the exception of the rook, and which he castled with, and now he moved his bishop, while my pieces, with the exception of my a file rook, have all been put into play and are developed. I don't usually comment in my games. I don't know if you've noticed. If you've been watching, then I'm sure you realize that my comments are kept to a minimum, and that's simply because I can't play and think at the same time. If I continue to banter during my games, I find myself losing. I do much better when I'm quiet and I just focus on the game. So I'm not at the level yet where I fly on autopilot. I need to really think about my moves. Otherwise I get my ass kicked. So, I prefer for that not to happen. So right here, my opponent activated his queen and placed it on e2. I moved my bishop, or rather my rook, to the c file, hoping to capture the pawn on c4. But the opponent's queen on e2 kind of prevented me from doing that. And it also threatened my knight. It was threatening my knight, and so I moved my other rook from the f file to the e file to protect the knight. And so I have a rook there and the knight, a queen on the d2, d7 square, because there is, the opponent has the queen and the rook on the e file, and it's good to have 2 points of attack, on that square, or protecting rather the e7 square. And then the bishop, I moved my bishop down away from the b4 square. My hope was to capture that knight. Obviously that didn't happen. This move by my opponent is kind of pointless. I don't think he realized that I don't know what he was going for really. I can't capture that knight with my queen, obviously, so that's secure, but I guess his idea was to capture the a2 pawn, which is protected by my bishop, obviously. So having that knight where it is, right there, my opponent's knight, it's kind of, useless. It's not doing anything. It's not a very good place for him to be. And as a matter of fact, he went ahead and, committed a blundered it right there. So I just took that free knight and had my bishop sneakily hidden on the e7 square for a very, very long time. And you'll see what happens in a little bit. Make sure to smash up the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Just a quick reminder. Here, this was problematic. It took me a while to figure this little conundrum out. The queen is attacking the g7 square, and the bishop, the opponent's bishop on b2 is gunning for the f6 square, which if he did take, I would not be able to recapture the bishop with my g7 pawn because my king would be exposed. So I had to figure out a way of protecting that. And my rook is also pinned at the same time to my queen, because if I move my rook, then his queen can capture my queen, and there is nothing I could do about it. There's nothing that protects my queen. So this is not a best position. Always make sure that all your pieces are protected. That's very important. If you ever do find yourself in a position where some pieces aren't protected, unless you're planning on sacrificing them, it's very important for you to make sure that that doesn't happen. If an exchange is to take place, then make sure that it's an even one, or at least, one that doesn't cost you too much material. Obviously, that's the name of the game. So right here, the queen is threatening the pawn on h7, which is not great. And so I decided to move my king back to g8, just to prevent the queen from, violating my airspace right there. So I moved my king back, and he moved my opponent. I don't know if it's a he or she. My opponent moved their queen back to g4. Oh my lord, what's happening? Sorry about that. I believe my next move here is to capture the rook on e1, which is returned in favor, and then I move my bishop back, or rather my rook back to f file to protect the pawn on f6, for the same reason that I mentioned before. If my opponent were to capture that pawn with his bishop, I wouldn't be able to recapture with my g7 pawn because my king would be exposed. So, and at the same time, my queen is pinned to the knight. I'm stuck with the knight. If I move my queen, then I lose my knight, and if I move my knight, I lose my queen. So I needed to secure the knight in order to free my queen, which is why I moved, I believe the next move, yeah, the g7 pawn up to g6, and that frees up my pawn. I do have the rook on f8, which protects my pawn on f6 from attack by the bishop on b2. And now I have freed up the queen, and I'm just waiting for the opponent to do his thing. And this is his thing. I don't remember what I do, so let's wait and see. I'm pretty sure I moved my... Oh, I think I moved my the knight, because now that the rook is right in the way, I'm able to move my knight. My queen is protected by his rook, and I threatened his queen by moving my rook down to h6, which actually wasn't that great because the knight is not protected by anything. So if my opponent had decided to move his queen to h4, I would have to either move my queen over to g4 to g7, or my king up to g7. So good thing that he didn't, or they didn't, which allowed me to push my pawn further up. It took me a while as well to figure this move out, but I figured this would be a good move, and I pushed my pawn further up. I threatened the queen, and this is where my opponent blundered, and which ended the game. See, my bishop was sitting camouflaged on a2 quietly for a long time, and even I forgot about it. So when my opponent moved his queen, that sealed his fate. So that's it. That's game 31. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, of course. Come back for the next one. See you in the next game. Peace.